The sound of morning in the eastern Himalayas. Yak herders gather their animals. In this part of the world, the relationship between the herders and their animals has not changed for thousands of years. Through the centuries, yak of this isolated region have developed specific genetic traits. Traits that allow them to survive the harsh climate, the difficult terrain, the scarce food. And as a result, the yak supply the local people everything they need to survive. Sharing Gelchen and his wife are in the midst of their annual migration. They spend summers at 5,000 meters where their animals graze with other herds. But each November they move down into the forests to escape the harshest weather. We have chosen these images to begin this video because of what these shaggy, gentle, and surprisingly graceful animals represent. If it weren't for the unique combinations of genes they carry in their bodies that allow them to survive here, there could be no human population in this part of the world. We will continue this journey through other farming and herding areas of Asia. And look at many other species of domestic animals to present a picture of what we call their genetic diversity. To illustrate the contribution that this diversity makes to the world's food security, and to show the impact of modern technology on this important resource. And as we travel and look at different breeds, different terrain, different needs of the local people, the ever-present link will be the relationship between the farmers, their animals, and the environment. Although farmers began domesticating animals 12,000 years ago, it has only been in this century that technology entered the picture. Before technology, breeding was a matter of evolution, survival of the fittest, or of individual breeding plans of the farmers themselves. But farmers only dealt with animals indigenous to their worlds. Now, sophisticated genetics programs include artificial insemination, embryo transplants, sophisticated information systems, and DNA molecular research. In this modern world, national and traditional borders disappear. Distance no longer matters. Animal semen can be zoomed around the world in hours to create hybrids, even new breeds. This brings technology into the partnership between farmers and animals. Policymakers are also joining the partnership. At last, they recognize the incredible importance of protecting this resource. That all animal breeds that exist today have the potential to make contributions beyond their indigenous environments. Because of their strength, because of their resistance to disease, because of their ability to reproduce, because of dozens of other characteristics of their genetic makeup. But first, these breeds must be catalogued and their genetics better understood. Women in this area of Vietnam raise pigs to supplement family income. 5 years ago, the government offered a training program to introduce local women to the e-pig, an indigenous breed that was facing extinction because it was small and farmers were opting for larger breeds that could provide more kilos for the market. The government trainers taught the women that although this pig is small, it is resistant to disease. It can live in low-standard housing, and it can survive on a diet of sweet potato leaves and rice bran. And the small size makes it easier to handle. So the women alternate litters. One remains the straight breed. The next, they cross with a larger breed and the offspring can be sold. With this plan, they conserve the straight breed but also maintain their level of income. These farmers in Thailand have a story that is almost the opposite. 25 years ago, the government offered them the opportunity to cross these indigenous Khao Lam Pun cattle with a Western breed. But after several generations, the farmers realized there were problems. The new crossbreed did not gain weight quickly enough after the dry season and could not reproduce regularly. So 5 years ago, the area farmers started a cooperative, went to the government and asked to have their indigenous cattle back. The government agreed, and now the size of the members' herds has tripled. These chickens are indigenous to eastern Java. They can survive on the food they forage in the yard and the rice grains Imas Maskana occasionally offers as a supplement. She calls them her savings account.
There's been an economic crisis. I have needed cash. 2 weeks ago, I sold 40 chickens.
She says friends who were raising imported chickens that needed to eat imported grain suffered. When the economic crisis came, they could not afford to buy the grain. There are countless stories similar to these, of people who have thousands of years of traditional close relationships with their animals. They know what their animals provide, and they know what they must provide their animals. This farmer in Bhutan maintains a small herd made up of crosses of indigenous Bhutanese breeds.
I prefer the local breeds because the imported breeds need more care. In the summer, when I'm busy with crops, the local breeds can be trusted to wander in the forest during the day, find their own food, and return home in the evening.
He uses his male animals for ploughing, the females for milk. Their manure fertilizes his crops. The same with these Bhutanese villagers, who use their local horses to transport goods among the mountain settlements. Several years ago, there was an attempt to cross this indigenous horse with a European alpine horse. The resulting breed performed well in the lowlands, but the local people found that the crossbreeds could not handle tricky mountain trails. Only their own time-tested breeds are deemed appropriate for this type of terrain. It is always the same link: farmers, animals, the environment. That is why any plan for managing the gene pools of domestic animals must respect the knowledge, the needs, and the constraints of local people, not just the application of modern technology. That's the reason the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations organizes meetings such as this one held in Rome. This intergovernmental working group includes animal specialists and policymakers from around the world. Here, individual problems such as farmers wanting more calves or horsemen needing more sure-footed animals are put into a global perspective. The issue is food security. With the dramatic increase in global population, the world simply needs to produce more food from the same resources. And the fact is, nearly 40% of the world's food and agriculture needs are supplied by domestic animals. In the past, mistakes were made. The urgent need to increase food production to cope with demand led to some shortcuts. Some of those shortcuts were successful and useful, some were not. The horror of this story is that 30% of all domestic breeds, those animals that offer so much to mankind, are already on the brink of extinction. In 1994, with Japanese funding, FAO established the first stage of a regional assistance program in 12 Asian nations to raise awareness of the threats to the domestic animal populations and to begin looking for solutions. Of course, there is an enormous difference between the highlands of Bhutan and the rainforest of Indonesia, between the floodplains of Vietnam and the hills of Thailand. But according to regional coordinator David Steen, their problems are remarkably similar, and the regional program gives national coordinators the chance to exchange ideas and experiences and develop country networks.
We've also achieved a great success, in my view, with the national management plans. They have been developed by the countries over the last 3-4 years to address what their policy and their program should be for the future to best use the genetic resources available.
Throughout the region, governments are conducting surveys and beginning to implement long-term plans to conserve and manage their indigenous breeds and crossbreeding programs. FAO has developed an online global information system offering data on more than 5,000 breeds found in 180 countries. The leaves gathered by Pham Van Boy and his granddaughter, and the shavings his wife slices off a banana stalk, will be fed to the family's Mongkai pigs. These pigs have enormous stomachs that can digest incredibly rough food and still produce healthy litters. These pigs in Bhutan, with their black skin, are able to withstand extremely strong ultraviolet rays in the high altitudes. Dairy cattle imported to Vietnam are crossbred with local cattle. Maintaining just 25% of the local genes gives them resistance to diseases and other stresses usually found in this humid climate. Now the new crossbreed can be developed even further. The Vietnamese Ak chicken has white feathers but black flesh. Its meat and eggs are used in traditional healing. Now, modern testing has actually found that both meat and eggs have high protein content. A small processing plant now offers a market to local producers. These are just a few examples of animals with unique characteristics that allow them to survive the hazards of their environments. Now, if these genetic endowments are shared properly, they can improve the chances for other animals to survive in other similar environments. For 12,000 years, farmers have carried all the responsibility for maintaining or improving the genetic characteristics of their animals. Their individual successes have brought us to this point. Their continued successes will mean improved food security for themselves and their families, and when added together, improved food security for the world.